I mean, internships are a very important part of our whole law school because, again, like the most important part about law school is not the bare acts, the studies, or all that stuff. I mean, of course, that is important, but the most crucial part is the practical application of whatever you learn in the law school. And the first thing you will realize once you graduate and you enter the job market, the first thing everybody will tell you, no matter what you have on your CV, they will tell you, show us what you know. We will test you out for a month or whatever time period they see fit. After obviously they see your CV, but then they'll test it out in practical because a lot of internships for that matter, they'll teach you what you haven't even thought about in law school. The same acts and the same the whole studies you've done, the entire subject you've studied in an entire semester, 2 semesters in the law school. An internship can teach you all of it and more in a week or 10 days because the practical application of each and every case requires 10 different bare acts and 10 different acts, laws, everything to get into the same place. So uh, before we started the whole mapping out process, the first and foremost thing, I mean, about myself is basically I like to know all the parties involved in every act that I do. So basically, if I have to take up a case, right, there are three major parties involved. One is obviously the advocates ka side, which is going to be most of us. Then there are the judges and the admin and everybody. And then third party, which people don't really think about most much, is the legislature part. Like who is drafting the laws, what is the system, what is everything. And you guys all must have seen what has recently been done with the IPC and the Evidence Act and everything that the new ones are coming in, right? I mean, they're still being debated about, but they might just actually come in, right? So internships are the best way to learn all these things before you step out into the actual world where because each and every case is it may just be another case for you, right? But it is very important, it may be the most important thing of the client. So you have to deal with each case very carefully and very with all your efforts and sincerity. So you can't be like, oh, it's just a simple case or I'm not close to the party or anything for that matter. It just doesn't matter. The client has come to you with their concern, with their difficulty, then you as an advocate are supposed to solve them with utmost sincerity, right? So when you're interning, my advice would be the first and foremost, no matter what you have to do, even if you have a family practice, if you never want to do litigation, if you don't even want to practice law for that matter, right? So a lot of people want to join the judiciary, a lot of people who just want a legal background and then, maybe do an MBA or something later, whatever the plan may be. But if you actually want to experience law, you have to intern at the district court or the lowest courts you can find around a tribunal, a district courts or whatever. Like if you go to the High Court or Supreme Court directly, just because I mean, a lot of people can like they have connections, they have people, they have family members who are practicing in the High Court, Supreme Court, and they'll want to go with them. Obviously, it looks good on your CV, but when it comes to the learning part, going to a district court and you know what you actually can call scrubbing your shoes out on those floors, that is crucial to your learning experience. Before you start anywhere, anything, go to a district court. And if you have, so there are 5 year and there are 3 year students, right? Now, 5 year students have the luxury of going to more district courts because they have longer tenure to intern. So for 5 year and 3 year for that matter, I would suggest go to at least two or three district courts, different district courts, because each district court, now this is where the practical difference comes in, the ground zero difference, right? So you've studied the law, you know the exact section and everything. But even in your law school, you what they teach at general is basically case laws. So you can't just be like, this is what the act says. Interpretations are crucial, and that you will learn at the district court because district court is where all of the evidence is submitted, the basic facts are admitted, everything is done. And most important part is the process, the whole process from client. When a client comes to you, they will not tell you the law, they will not tell you anything, they will just tell you this happened and what are my legal remedies, or I want to file a case against this person, whatever the case might be. So the first and foremost thing you have to do is take out the legal points out of your client. Be like, okay, so this is the issue. These are the acts which we can file under. These are the legal remedies you have. These are the legal course of actions which we can take. Right after that, you some people take a synopsis from the client themselves that whatever date whatever documents you have, whatever you think is important, give it to us. Then we'll accordingly make our own thing. Otherwise, you can just be like, fine, okay, this is what I've understood from your whatever you've told me. I will draft something along what from whatever you've told me, and then I will send it to you, and then we can may take it further. But the basic thing is just from listening to your client, because your client can range from anybody from a worker who, for example, this case I was just researching on, and this a poor laborer has come to us. He was unloading from a crane, and the goods that were on the crane fell on him and broke his leg. Now he wants to file a case. Now there are multiple ways to file a case for him, right? So we had to research. And all he told me was he was unloading, and the goods dropped, and got into he got an injury. So from this, I can't ask him to give me anything else. Like he doesn't know anything else. All I can be now, I have to figure out everything else. So this part, all of this, you will learn on your internships. And so, okay, so now district course where you've interned, you have seen the on ground reality of lawyers, of judges, of the staff. And this is where you will realize the courtroom conditions. Like a lot of freshers or people who haven't interned before must have seen movies, right? Law and all key. And the Suits, Boston Legal, Apna, Guilty Minds, all these series you must have seen. And honestly, trust me, when you go to a district court, the first and foremost thing that'll happen to you is you will realize that that is not how law works. You don't stand in front of a judge or a jury. I mean, obviously, all of you know there is no jury system in India, but even then, you don't stand in front of a judge and 10 people looking at you and be like, start a monologue or just a dramatic story. You will get 30 seconds, a minute max, in front of the judge when your matter is called out. And only the only people sitting inside the courtroom will be other lawyers who are waiting for their turn or who've already finished their thing. So you don't go in front of a judge and start like so sad, this, that. I mean, okay, a little bit is there, of course. It's still a real life story, but most of it is you have to be prepared with on point law points. Be like, okay, this section says this. This is the point of contention which the court has asked me to prove. Another case I'll give you an example of. We had to prove a corruption case against an individual, and the first and foremost thing the judge, before admitting a petition, was prove the funding cap thing. Because if you want to book anybody under the Prevention of Corruption (PC) Act, basically you have to prove the funding is given by the government, and then you have to go forward with it, right? So there was no direct funding, but there were judgments which showed the indirect funding in different ways and everything. That yes, you this guy is a public servant and he can be booked under the PC Act. So the entire we took, I think, 3 days to just convince the judge of this point. But all 3 days combined were less than 2 minutes, if that is even 2 minutes, because judge called us. We were ready with the judgments. We printed out the judgments, highlighted the main point, then took out the PC Act, the other acts, and be like, okay, this is what the act says. This is what the judge in another case, the High Court or Supreme Court, has held in this with similar facts, and then this is it. So first we took judgment, second time we took judgment, third time the judge was finally convinced, like, okay, yes, this is how it is. So all of this you need to understand, and this is something you will only get to know at the district court, because High Court, if the a case is going, it is most likely an appeal, which means everything else in the case, the facts and everything has already been done, right? So you will not learn all of that at the High Court or higher courts, Supreme Court. So district courts where you've done, now you've realized the ground reality. Second step would, in my this thing would be, if you can, while working at a district court, right, or even at higher court, you try and build a connection with a judge or somebody who can get you an internship under a judge. So as a legal researcher, as a reader, as just some office clerk, whatever option you can get, and there are clerk exams also which you can give in your final years and all. But once you've interned or at least even shadowed under a judge, you will realize the other side. As an advocate, you're fighting from the opposite side of the table, right? And as the judge, what exactly goes on, how it is processed, so a judge will not just listen to you and be like, okay, this is what you're saying, I will, accept or reject it. He most likely goes home and studies all the cases that are in front of him the next day. So that for this particular subject, he has legal researchers, interns, advocates, lawyers, whatever, so they come, they read all these cases with the facts, the laws, everything, and then they make a synopsis of, these are the law points, these are the points of contention, this is what we need clarification on, and based on these things, this should be a likely outcome. And then the final outcome is still in the hands of the advocate, like of the both parties, right? It's not like I say something and the other party will just listen. Both parties compete at the same thing, and then something is reached. So this will help you in multiple ways. Under a judge, while working at under an advocate at the district court, you have learned everything which comes from the advocate side, the filing, evidence gathering, drafting, pleading, everything. Now, when you're at the opposite side of the table and under a judge, what you have realized is what you can see is after the judge, after an advocate has filed his petition, right, with everything he had, annexes and everything. How do you scrutinize it? How do you study the case law? And I mean, there are 100 cases in front of a judge. He can't study all 100 cases every time they're brought to him. So he makes, points, he makes things, and he's like, okay, so these are the legal points I need this thing on. And then the issues are developed, right? So, for example, like I told you, the main issue in our petition was funding. That's all he cared about. Everything else was sorted. Everything else he accepted. He's like, okay, fine, whatever else, tell me funding, and then we will move forward. And then as we move forward, the judge will give us more issues. Be like, okay, prove, clarify this, clarify that, and then you keep going on. Then how the dates are given, right? How can you? I mean, people say in law the dates, all those things, right? So what you need to figure out is why and how, right? And then you also understand how the judge works. The judge doesn't function alone. He has people with him. He has an almith. He has an almith room, not just one almith. He has like an entire body working for filing, for dates, for all the filing paperwork. Then there's a reader. Then there's stenos. There are 10 other people in a court who help the judge do his duty to the best of his ability. All of this you will learn on the other side of the table. I mean, you're interning under a judge, right? And after you're done with the judge, now you can think about firms, because the best thing during law school is to intern under as many variety as possible, so that once you start working, you have a fair idea of what you like, what you don't like. Because on paper, or if you go in Google, or you take other people's experience, even for that matter, there is only so much you can get to know. The actual reality you will get to know once you intern, right? So you've interned at a district court, you've interned under a judge, you've interned at higher courts, even for that matter. Now switch to firms, because even if you don't want to do corporate, if you don't want to get into this thing, or people who didn't want to do corporate have done internships at the court and seen the litigation side, right? So now both people have to do both, so that you know exactly how everything works in each, and then move forward with it, right? So take a firm or two, and there are firms which do litigation and the consultation work, and then there are firms which do just the firm work, like you just sit in an office, do drafting and do consultation and corporate governance and all those things. So that is also there. So experience all of it, right? And now, after you've done with all this, there are still some areas left, like it's not just litigation or corporate. Internship under a parliamentarian, a Lok Sabha member, any person who's worked is everything that goes on, right? And one more party which is involved are the lobby groups. So for example, NGOs or big organizations which not don't exactly get into the legal field, but they lobby for certain laws, like 377 was abolished, 370 was abolished, then decriminalization of adultery, or such laws, or even for the matter of fact, the new laws which are coming in, the new Evidence Act, the new IPC, all of those, they were not just lawyers who were there. There were other people, non-lawyers, who are working on it. So these are social groups, representatives of social groups, different parts of life, and they're just there because law is not just law; it is how everything functions in the society, right? So now you've worked with all of these people, and after these 6 7 internships, or 5 6 internships, and now also depending on your 5 year or 3 year, because you don't have so much time in the 3 year course where you can do such internships. So, but because you've already done your graduation, you may have already worked with certain firms, like NGOs you may have worked with, other things you may have worked with, so you've already done. So Karake, basically, after say 5 6 internships, now you're sorted. Now you know exactly what everything is. By this time, you need to figure out what you actually want to do in the long run. Like, you've explored, you have learned everything you had to learn in practically, basically. Now you need to figure out what you actually want to do in the long run. For example, if you want to get into arbitration, right? So if you want to get into arbitration, obviously now you if you haven't before, now you start an internship with an arbitration firm. There's the Delhi International Arbitration Firm. There are people other than this thing where they're just arbitration. They litigation, they have different teams. If you go to Ketan, CamSam, any of these firms, they have a different cell for arbitration, which deals only with arbitration, or at least 90% of the time they deal with arbitration. So now you intern with such cells in which all you do, or the most of what you do, is arbitration. Now you've specialized in one field. It's not that you don't know the rest of it, but your specialization is in arbitration. So now you intern accordingly, and you intern with the intent of getting a PPO, the pre-placement offer, or you build connections in such a way that before your internship ends, right? They should be like, okay, you finish your law school and come back to us, we will hire you. This does two things for you. One, you're out of the headache of looking for a job immediately after law school. You can keep searching for a job while you're working. You get out of law school, you finish your degree, you get enrolled or you don't get enrolled. That's, depending on your firm's requirements, and then you start working. While you're working, you're obviously learning, you're growing your experience, you're building a CV, and then if you're not happy or if you want to grow, expand, whatever, you can keep doing it. But at least that headache of immediately running after a job, and most people, what happens is right after law school, people grab the first thing they get. They're like, better than sitting at home. So that, fine, that is still again better. But in the long run, time is crucial. If you've interned properly, if you've mapped out your internships in a way that you build up to your actual goal, you wouldn't have to waste time eventually in just searching or exploring or understanding how the things work. So work with specializations and all, right? And now, so obviously, so I'll tell you some fields which are there in the law part, right? So there is litigation, obviously. Then there are firms, corporate governance, corporate stability, and all those things. Then there's arbitration. There is in-house counsel, in which you basically do 50-50 of both. You mostly stay in-house of any firm, of any non-legal firm, just like say Microsoft, they have their in-house counsel. What they do is they make sure that the all the policies, the labor laws, the product, the this thing, IPRs, everything is in line with the present laws, right? Then you can even work with the RBI and all in your internships, because then you will learn the banking side of it. If you want to get into tax law and all those things, right? So you get the whole thing, and how to make sure your firm, if you're working as an in-house counsel, how to make sure that your firm is in line with the guidelines issued by RBI, SEBI, and all those things. That is what you will mostly do in-house. But there will also be cases. For example, you're working with RERA, right? When you're working with RERA, you'll most likely be making sure that all the documents that are given while allotment, procurement of land, everything is as per law. And if tomorrow it was challenged, you are safe in maximum possibility. But if tomorrow a case was to arise and you're an in-house counsel, you will most likely go to court to fight that case. You will not hire another lawyer, because then what's the point of you have been there? Then you can also get into with the UN, right? If you're working with organizations or NGOs, there are firms, there are organizations like the UN and HRC. There are other, I'll tell you some names if you guys like this. There's Child Rights in You, Hope Foundation. There is People Unions for Civil Liberties. There is Human Rights Law Network, right? RBI, Ministry of Commerce and Industry also give you internships. Ministry of Women and Children Development give you internships. So these are places which give you internships which are connected to the government or the UN for that matter, and that is also a line of work you can choose. But again, to make realize or to understand the actual working, you have to intern with them. And applying for a job directly without any prior experience with them will be very difficult for you, right? So if you intern with them, even for a month for that matter, and they like your work, they'll have a record, right? They'll be like, okay, this person has interned with us. This is how they performed. This is who they were under, and they give a good review about them, right? So now you're like, okay, this is a decent candidate, and we can see how much they've learned since the time they interned with us, and then offer you a job accordingly. But if you want to work with them, intern with them, because if you don't intern, you will not know how they actually function, right? On paper they might sound amazing, or they might sound terrible, but in reality they might be the complete opposite of it. So to figure that out and to build the connection you need to get into the job, you need to intern with them. Then of course you can go abroad. You can say do an LLM abroad, or you can just go abroad for I mean, a lot of countries, say Australia and some parts of US, they accept the Indian law degree. So all you have to do is go there and clear their exam, and your law degree is valid. So you don't have to study there, like say. just clear the exam. So you can do that also. And again, there is no particular internship for this, but this experience you will get when you're working with international organizations. Whichever organization has people from more than one country will give you that experience. But what is that? What are the working conditions like there? What is the legal system there? Why is he working with a firm based out of India, or what all those things? So, or you can get into academics. You can just you can start by writing journals. You can start by writing articles, and you can get into this thing. And a lot of people out of you might be interested, or I mean, who isn't in judiciary? So you can start applying for judiciary exams. But again, a lot of people I have met in the past year have become a cleared judiciary, become judges, and then left because they didn't like the work. They had never interned with the judge, and they didn't know the actual workings of a judge. Obviously, it sounds nice, right? I'm a judge. It's amazing. But when you don't intern with them, you don't really know the actual ground reality. Like, judges are scrutinized on every step. Each and every action, a higher court can just be like, you did this wrong, or you're supposed to do this but you did this, or whatever. And you can't take leaves. You have a lot of restrictions on you, right? And you're always under surveillance. So these are some negative points which for some people, right? And like, okay, my judgment, yeah, but so many other issues. So for that you need to intern, right? And then go for judiciary. It's amazing. I mean, that prefix before your name is what it is. But you need to realize that once you've put in so much effort and been through such a hard time to clear the exam to become a judge, that you just don't enjoy the job because you didn't know what it was actually asking of you. So intern for that. Get to know the other side, right? And you can also become an advocate and record, but that actually requires the eligibility is 5 years of practice. So 4 years practice in litigation and 1 year under an AOR. That's a certificate program. Like, it's a proper formality. So after that, you can give the OR exam, and once you clear it, then you'll become an AOR, and then obviously the rest of the process. So you'll work with the Supreme Court. People will file through you. But the actual job of an AOR, again, once you've been turning under an AOR, you will realize the actual job of an AOR is not just to file cases. He's supposed to read the entire document which has come to him, district court and high court, and scrutinize it. Be like, okay, why are they appealing again? Because high court was already in appeal, most likely. So why are they appealing again? What is new? Are they adding new facts? Are they adding new law points? Are there any new judgments which they're supposed to come? And then once he can find those things, like, okay, fine, this is new. This is what we need to fight about. Then they should be fighting. What people mostly do is they just think, okay, no, we'll keep appealing all the way. That's, again, this is what you will learn in an intern.
So that is how it's supposed to work, right? And yeah, so once, okay, you've interned at various places, you have, so the basic skills you need to pick up in your internship are how to research topics, right? An issue has come up, and how do you research that issue? Do you look at the sections? Do you look at the case laws? Do you just Google the whole fact? Be like, you put in the entire facts of the case and be like, okay, judgments, right? So how do you research it, and how well hard do you research it? Because you will realize this as you proceed in the law school, right? Once you've taken out a judgment, see, even if it's a Supreme Court for that matter, there are so many judgments in the Supreme Court which say one thing, but years later or even months later, sometimes that judgment is overturned by a different panel or a higher panel. There can be a 7 judge bench, 5 judge bench, which is overturning a single judge or a 2 judge bench, or whatever, or even the whatever is there. Like, one judgment doesn't mean that it is the final judgment. You have to look at the latest judgment, and you have to look at all connecting judgments. If you're filing a case, or if you're filing a judgment in your case, you need to make sure that you've researched properly on the fact that this judgment stands, right? If you file a judgment, and fine, the judge might overlook it and be like, okay, this judgment says this, and I agree with the facts, I agree with the law point, I'll pass the judgment. But the other party might will scrutinize it for sure. They'll be like, okay, no, this judgment was overturned in this judgment, and this is later, so this will be followed. Or this was up for higher court, so this will be followed, that way. So this is how you research properly. And the most important part, which you need to learn in an internship, because this, okay, before anything else, before you start learning, you need to realize that nobody will teach you anything unless you want to learn. Unlike school, people are working. When you're interning, these people are working. So if you're working with a big shot name, he probably is the busiest guy in the world. He has multiple cases, multiple clients, 10 other commitments. So he will most likely put you under one of his juniors, or you can shadow him, but he will not be like, okay, this is how it works, this is how this is how that is. You need to observe, you need to see how things are working, and then that is why you need to intern more, right? Because nobody will tell you anything. Nobody's going to tell you anything at all, not even your friends. Although in law school, in law as a profession, the biggest perk you have coming out of an institution like Jindal is your peers. Most people you see sitting around you are from good backgrounds, right? And some of them are even from legal backgrounds. So they have connections, you have connections. All these connections together make a much larger net, which you can use for each and everything. Because there are a lot of things in which all you need is somebody to connect to, right? Say for example, you specialize in arbitration, for example, again, and this other friend of yours specializes in some other field, but say in divorce laws or in marriage laws or whatever, right? Now he has a case, but he needs arbitration, so he will refer to you, right? And for same thing, like you have arbitration, but the parties don't want to get into the arbitration part, and now they're like, okay, no, you go into this court, and they will sort the matter out for you. So all of these things is networking. Networking doesn't mean you need to be unethical or anything, right? It's nothing like that. It's just, okay, I know this person, I know he'll understand or she'll understand the actual work, and they'll do it for you at a decent speed. So law may you need two things: time and scrutinizing of everything. Everything needs to be scrutinized by you 10 times before anything becomes official. Changing even a single letter in your filed petition is a headache, right? While you're interning at any court, you will see if you want to change anything in your petition, you will have to file 10 applications. Then they will take your new copy. Then you will send all those copies to all the parties involved. And then if it's a major change, people will be like, no, no, we'll restart the whole thing. So your client will get after you, be like, your fault is costing me time and money. All that headache comes into big. So drafting is very important to learn. I mean, a lot of internships, you will simply be drafting. Just you'll be given a case, be like, draft this petition, draft that file, draft this application, draft whatever. Don't take it as monotonous work or anything. Like, you'll have a format, but each and every word you type can mean the difference between a loss and a win for you in that case, right? And how much say, for example, if you're asking for compensation, the percent of compensation you're asking, the act you're asking it under, the section you're asking it under, everything can change, everything can do a lot of things. So you need to make sure, while you're interning, you need to draft, you need to observe how these guys draft, you need to see how they tell you to draft, and then say you've drafted a document, you will obviously send it to your senior, be like, okay, ma'am, this is what I've drafted. Is there any changes needed? Are there any changes needed? Is there anything else? Then they will tell you, be like, okay, no, this point is wrong, this is right, this is okay, you can change this in a different way, you can write the same point like this. But why is all of this important? Because this is how you attract attention of the judge to that point, and it helps you maybe go faster, maybe go quick, better, or it'll end up for you better, or those particular words which you've changed might actually relate to a judgment which support you, right? So small issues, but this is where you need to scrutinize your drafting process and the whole process again, right? I like initially we talked about, a client comes to you with a very basic thing, which of what he or she thinks is right or wrong. Now they're not lawyers, you are. So they will tell you the whole thing, or they might not tell you the whole thing, but you need to make sure while you're drafting, you know exactly everything that needs to be put into the draft and what needs to be omitted out of the draft, because some things are unnecessary. Now you make a 10-page draft writing each and every detail of the case, judge will be like, I'm not going to read this, it's stupid, right? For example, or you make it to the point that you need to explain every point while you're arguing in the court, that both these matters are harmful for you, so you can't go either way. So you need to find that perfect balance, and then keep drafting that way without a single mistake, right? And then documentation, right? You need to put annexures into it. You need to put, say, court fees. You need to put vagalatnamas, affidavits, notarized affidavits, and 10 other things. And then chronological order or case order, or then there are connected matters, all of that. So whole documentation process, lawyer, is a lot of paperwork. Each and everything, each and every application you file, each and every evidence you file, each and every, okay, for example, in Evidence Act, if you need to get a uh, electronic device, anything, 65B Evidence Act, you need to file an application for it along with it, so that to prove authenticity, like, okay, no, this is fine, this has been verified, this is an actual unadulterated video or audio or photo which can be submitted as evidence, for example, right? So that's another paperwork. If you forget it, the other party, so okay, now it's not as difficult also as I may be making it sound, right? Two lawyers, both from the same field, no, okay, fine, this is understood, this is obvious. But again, the judge, now again, while you're interning, you will also realize this, that each and every judge, even though the law may say whatever, is very different. For example, I went to this court, and the first thing the judge is like, all parties which are present right here, show me your original Aadhaar cards. Then he saw everybody's Aadhaar card, cross-checked it with the documents, address, and everything, and whoever's didn't match, he dismissed the petition, be like, file a new one with your correct address. Simple as that. Nothing. And some judges don't care. Like this person in front of me only had two Aadhaar cards, two different addresses, and the address in the petition was the third address. This is like, doesn't matter. This is the address I'm taking on record, whatever. All right. So that's it. So there are judges like that also. It's all up to you. And this is what you will learn while you're interning at any court. Because all judges in all districts are different. You go to, for example, if you go to Gurgaon, uniform, the black coat, white shirt, all that thing. Gurgaon, rarely people wear a coat. In fact, they don't even wear band. They wear a black tie. That's the uniform that goes around there. I mean, you can wear, obviously the band and coat are not prohibited, and there, but people will realize you're not a local lawyer, a local counsel. And another thing you will realize, if you have to file a case in any district court, you need a local counsel. For example, if you're registered with Delhi or any other state or this thing, when you go to Gurgaon District Court, they will ask you, the bar room will put a stamp on it and give the local council ka number and this thing. It will be filed on their name. They don't have to come to the case again, but this again depends on the judge. Some judges be like, bring your local counsel. Some judges be like, your local counsel is just for filing. You're the actual counsel. So these things, again, you learn while you intern, because these are nitty-gritties which aren't exactly laid down in law. These are not procedures, these are nothing, these are just how things work in a particular court. So to learn all of this, you need to work there. And I'll tell you the filing process. So if you go to Delhi District Court, what they do is you just give the hard copy. At max, they'll like give the number of copies as the number of parties involved, and that's it. In Gurgaon, when you file, they'll ask you for a pen drive or a CD, a pen drive filled with the soft copy. It has to be stand by the bar room, stand by the local council, and then 10 other things, right? So all of this has to be there. So you need a scanned copy separately in Gurgaon and not in Delhi, and all of that process. So all of this is different in different districts. Now, procedure might say whatever, and you can go in front of a judge and be like, "No, sir, procedure says this, but these people are asking for this." I mean, judge is not going to listen to you. Judge is like, this is how all the lawyers are doing. What is your issue in it? And why can't you give them a scanned copy, for example? Right? Also, another thing about the Gurgaon court, which is different from the Delhi court. Delhi may you go, you file your case, maybe you'll get the next date a week later, maybe the next day, whatever. Gurgaon, if you file, you get the first hearing the same day. So if I file a case, say by noon, after lunch, after 2 or 2:30, it'll be my first hearing. So it gets additional listing done in front of whichever judge, right? And with not technically whichever judge, because before filing, I have to go to the judge in which my case will most likely go, because it's decided, right, that this judge handles these kind of cases. Say if it's my TV case, or it's a divorce case, or if it's a check bounce case, or whatever. So each court more or less has like, okay, these cases go to this guy or this judge. You'll go to that judge, you will tell the reader of the almanac to stamp the file with that judge ka name, and then you go to the filing counter, and then you know which judge you're supposed to go to. And after lunch, or the filing room gives you a time, like around this time you go to the courtroom, the judge will call you and you present your matter. The first date is right then and there. So that's again a different thing which you learn while you're working at a district court. High court is a very different feel from a district court. Like my initial days of district court, I was like, I was getting disheartened, honestly, I would say, because what I saw in the TV and the movies, I was like, oh, what a wonderful place. And when you go to district court, you like the courts are in shambles. You're like, oh, this is how it looks like in actual life, right? I'm like, okay, weird. Then I went to the high court, and it's a completely different setup. Like it's a completely air conditioned building with cleanliness and everything, and the people are very decent and everything. The courtrooms are very different. I mean, so there are two judges. There are electronic calling out system. There is a whole system, and there's a TV LCD say put up on this on the wall, which shows each courtroom matter number. So you don't have to run around like I mostly do in the district court sometimes, running around from one court to another, finding out which matter is going on, right? Because say it has okay, different cases have different listings. So some case is say for admission or dismissal. Some cases are there for evidence. Some cases are there for notice. Some cases are there for whatever, a civil case, criminal list, criminal, and all these things. So the judge can start from any list, right? The judge might be like, oh, this is a smaller list, let's finish this off first and then we'll start with this thing. So you need to keep checking again and again which number is being called, which list is being going through, which gone through, so that you can figure out that okay, this is where I need to be at this time. So but again, high court and supreme court don't have that system. You can sit in any room and okay, like this is my courtroom which I have to go to eventually, and this is the number I have, this is the number going on. So it's much easier that way, right? And that you will realize eventually. And firms, again, firms now see, some places where I've interned, the litigation part was so easy. We didn't go to an office and sit there all day doing nothing. What we used to do is what my senior used to do, make me do is rather, this matter is in this court today. On one day we've done three district courts together, right? So we have a matter in one district court and another district court, whatever. So all I had to do is from my home go to the district court, and at home I prepare the matter. I read the whole case, prepare arguments, whatever I have to do for that particular case on that particular day, and then I just go to the court, do the work which I'm supposed to do, and I'm free. I don't have to sit in office and just pass my time. In a firm, however, that's not the case. So in a firm, like in any MNC, it's a say, on paper it's a 9 to 5 job. So you check in, you check out, you do whatever in between, doesn't really matter unless and until somebody's telling you to do something. But you can't leave the office before 5, and you get a specified lunchtime. Unlike in litigation, where you lunchtime is also not certain. Litigation, coming in, you know when you're coming in. Lunchtime, you're going home. Client meetings, nothing's fixed. Everything just keeps happening as they happen. In a firm, it's a little more structured, but that also means you're a little restrained compared to litigation, because in a firm there's an entire structure that goes on, and work is divided in advance by by the HR or by a team. They'll be like, okay, this work this person will do, this team will do, this is the days they will do, this is a deadline for them, whatever. And unfortunate as a lot of MNCs, you will also be taking home this work. After you've done 9 to 5 in the office, you will go home, maybe take a half an hour break, and then get back into drafting, researching, client calls, even, or anything for that matter. Or if your senior is staying late in a firm, they'll order food and you will be working through the night. Anything can happen, right? But the main difference between litigation and corporate, which you will realize, other than the working process, is the payment structure. Litigation, you get per case, or there are different structures: per case, per hearing, per per document you draft, per case you file, whatever. In MNCs, you have a fixed salary at the end of the month. The workload for that would be varying from nothing to everything under the roof, right? So you get your fixed salary every month, no matter you've worked or not. But in litigation, you can go from earning 10 rupees a month to 10 lakhs a month, right? And I'll tell you another scenario. We were sitting in the chambers, and this guy came in, right? Now he takes 2 lakhs per hearing, and he has 3 4 hearings a day. Like, he's a hotshot lawyer, I agree. So he was nominated for to be made a judge, a session or something it's called. So he was offered, and the first question this guy asks the people is, how much do I get paid? And people are like, a judge gets paid somewhere between 3 4 lakhs a month. And he's like, this is how much I take per hearing. Why would I want to switch into that? So for him, money was more important. A lot of people, the status is more important, right? So all of this you figure out during your internships when you're running around without the stress of the client, right? This internship ka part, the most crucial part you will realize is you can learn, you can explore, you can diversify your entire process without the pressure of the client's future in your hands. Now, people say advocates, doctors, and teachers are in a very similar area, right? A doctor's single smallest mistake can cost the life of a patient. Same as with the lawyer. If an advocate makes a mistake of smallest thing, the entire future of this person, like he or she might end up in jail. They might end up getting less or more money than they're supposed to. They might end up anywhere in the world just because you did something right or wrong. If you do something right, they might end up with more money than they were initially hoping for. And so will you. I mean, people say, don't fight for justice or anything. You remember that this is a job and you're working at the end of the day for yourself. And again, you should have ethics and morals, but you need to also realize how everything works and how you need to fit into the system. Because if you keep fighting the system every day, what ends up happening is you lose out on both ends. Your client also loses out and you also lose out. But you become a part of the system and do your best for your client. That's it. As an advocate in litigation, your main focus is your client, right? As long as he's not doing anything illegal or illegal, again, illegal is what you can't defend. If you can make sure that you've defended this point or it is within a flexible ambit of law, it is legal. That's the whole process of law. Interpretations and convincing the judge of that interpretation which supports you, for which you will obviously use your arguments, your evidence, and your previous judgments, previous case laws. Be like, okay, this judge gave this judgment in similar facts, and this is how it is. So that is how you do it, right? And the most important question is you're a fresher and you don't know where to apply, because who will give a job to a fresher? So I have a list of some organizations which will give you a very easy internship. You just, okay, not easy. What you need to realize when you're applying for the first year or even for the second year sometimes, what you need to realize is you have no experience in anything. So you will most likely get into a tier 3 or tier 4 firm in which you will be given the workload of 10 people. And honestly, if you can handle it, it is going to be much better for you than getting into a top firm doing just a particular job, because you don't learn the whole process. You just learn that one job, which is again not a bad option. Like, if you can perfect yourself in one job, you can make a living out of it. But internships, what you should be doing is learning the whole process. For example, if you getting in under an advocate, my ideal this thing would be if you can get into the all three stages of a case going on, right? If you can start by client counseling and then start the case from there. In another case where it's, somewhere in the middle stages, be like, okay, we are still arguing and everything. This is done, this is left, somewhere in the middle. And some cases which are on the climax of it. Like, like, okay, this is all of this is done, just this much is left, and we need to figure out. And after the judgment comes, what do you do with it? Is the client happy with the judge? Both parties happy with the judgment, or are you gonna go for an appeal? Or is there a settlement involved? Or uh, was there something more you could have done, something less you should have done, whatever, right? So if you can get into the whole process in all three stages of different cases, you will realize the difference. Like, initial is very different, right? For the main part of, okay, so if you get assignments in your law school, they'll most likely be, these are the facts, these are the issues, give me arguments, or these are the facts, find out the issues, right? The facts which are relevant to you and which are irrelevant to you, figuring that out is also very crucial. Client counseling is very crucial. Okay, I'll give you another example. This lady came to us with her mother. She wanted to file for a divorce, right? Now, her husband was a pilot, she was a school teacher, and they had one child. And these guys were living in a three-story building, completely owned by the husband's parents, and they were living on the same on a different floor as them. So now I will not tell you the location and everything, but I'll tell you a basic this thing. So each floor was a 4 BHK. Uh, Market value of around 4 to 5 CR per floor. right? And so the pilot used to have affairs, and as told to us by the client, he used to have multiple affairs with multiple air hostesses or other flying crew. And and these guys found out, and then they fought about it, they resolved it, they're like, it's okay, whatever, let's move on. This case came to us particularly because this particular affair, the husband wanted to marry this lady, right? Now he had already moved out of the house and started living with her and in another district. And now the lady with her child was living with the parents of the husband in the same house, because the issue was already so evident and open now that the guy had moved out of the house and living with the other woman. So what the grandparents did was they stayed on one floor. They gave one floor to the lady, not on paper, just they're like, okay, that floor is yours, you stay there, whatever. Now for a year, and that guy, the husband, had been pushing for a mutual divorce in which he said they will give her one floor and about 50 lakh as alimony, as permanent alimony, and be like, just get rid of just to, so that I can marry this other lady, basically. Now, this whole thing process of mutual divorce between, like, they were just like, sign the papers and let's get it over with, and then we will give you all of this. So thankfully, the lady was not dumb enough to sign these documents, because the document said nothing about any sort of compensation. They just said mutual divorce, and then verbal promise was made of property and money later on. But every time before the thing actually came into play, uh, something or the other happened, and these guys were never able to, actually hammer the details out. So she came to us a year and a half later, that the husband had already moved out, and simple as that. She just told us all these facts. Now she was skeptical about filing the whole divorce, because right now the grandparents were taking complete care of the grandchild, expenses and everything, and then she was also living in the same roof with them. Now if the whole issue she had was, if she files the case, two things happen for sure. Everybody gets to know that the divorce has been filed, and the grandparents completely, ignore her or trouble her or whatever. And the child whom the grandparents are taking care of loses that, as per her. Right? She thought the grandparents will stop taking care of her, because obviously she's filed for a divorce and she's tracking them to court. So her main issue was that. Now, how do you convince her of what is the better path for her? Right? How do you tell her, as per law, these are your rights, these are the legal courses you can take, and so all of those kind of things. So how do you convince her, how do you assure her that it'll be okay, or this is what should be the likely outcome which will be in your favor? So that client counseling, and then from that process, the drafting and the evidence and all of that initial process, and that is a very good stage to start on, because you realize how everything happens. Like, this lady just came to us crying with all of this details, and we had to take out the issues out of it, the legal points out of it, and then right then and there, without, okay, what you also need to realize is you need to have certain laws at the back of your head at all times, because you can't be looking at, okay, these are your facts, let me go through my bare acts and tell you what all remedies you have, because if you do that, the client's already gone by then. So you need to know certain things at the back of your head all the times, be like, okay, like the major ones. For example, most matrimonial disputes have a very similar, you know, case points. Then property disputes, then motor vehicle disputes, and these major disputes which will come to you. And obviously, specialized cases, you can't remember all the bare acts in the world. That'd be unreasonable. But these major cases which will most likely come to you, and while you're interning or while you're working, you would have specialized in something. You would have liked something and already know a lot about it, right? So you can tell the client, like, okay, these are the particulars of your case, these are what we should be going through, and whatever, and then you can get the client, right? So that is the whole initial stage. Middle stage is again arguments. Now you've already filed all evidence. There is cross examination has been done. Preliminary hearings have been done. Everything is done. Now arguments. Arguments is, I would say, the middle stage somewhere, because once you start arguing, then new things come up, because you filed something and now you need to interpret it in your manner. Both parties, both advocates will try and do that, right? Both the sides, the prosecution and the defendant, will be like, okay, let's try to convince the judge to our interpretation. And then you keep arguing on that. You will get dates, you will get 10 other things. and delay tactics are a very common thing. Now, as per law, there are costs which are supposed to be imposed after two or three, adjournments. But some reasons are genuine, some reasons are not. But judge can't decide that on his own, right? They'll be like, no, no, fine, it's okay. The lawyer's sick today. A new advocate has come instead of the old one, so you need to give them time. The other party is not available. There's some viral going on. There's a lockdown going on. Whatever. There could be 10 other reasons for which the matter can't be heard that day. Now, small costs could be imposed on the same day. For example, another time I went to this was this different party, not my case, but this guy it was a poor laborer who had come all the way from Bihar, and somehow in just 700 rupees he had come from Bihar to Delhi, and he had come for as a witness, but the opposite counsel didn't show up that day, and they instead sent an intern or an associate of them, and they were like, main counsel's not here today, so we can't argue the matter. Now, judge being whatever you want to call the judge, be like, this poor laborer has come all the way from Bihar, wasted 2 days of his daily wage and transportation cost just to because you called him here. And now you're saying you will not argue the matter. So before anything, you give him the 700 rupees transportation plus 2 days wage, which basically gave him 1500 right then and there, without any order, without anything. He told the intern or the junior to give 1500 out of their hand right then and there in front of him. So again, now that is overstepping boundaries of a judge, but that is what happens in the courtroom, right? After a point, the judge will you will get familiar with the judge after a point in your case. The first two hearings, and the judge will remember you and the case, which was very surprising to me, honestly. I mean, the judge faces 100 people a day with 100 different issues, but every time, so well, roaming around the district court, there is high chance that you bump into a judge outside the court, and say your car is parked outside or you're just going home or whatever, right? You bump into the judge, and this happened with me once, surprisingly. I was going home towards my car after I had to print out some documents. I was taking them out. I had a huge folder in my hand, and the judge was behind me, and I dropped my files, unfortunately, and I went down, and the judge stopped, and he had people with him who he had help. And while I was sorting my documents, just started talking to me about my case. And we had a hearing that day, so he maybe remembered freshly because of that. But either way, the judge started talking to me outside the court randomly because we bumped into each other. So that is again something you need to be prepared for, right? It's not just that you're going to be across a table and at a distance. You can bump into a judge. Okay, one more crucial part which you need to realize as an advocate: no matter how badly or how harshly you fight with the opposite counsel in the court, outside the court, you need to be friends with them. It's that simple, because it's not like you're fighting. Don't get personal with your opposite counsel. They're doing the same thing that you're doing, fighting to the best of their ability to represent their client, not you. It's not your case. It's not you who's being questioned. It is whatever you're doing for the client. Let them fight. If you start fighting inside, see, if you're not friends with the opposite counsel outside the courtroom, the next day you will fight inside the courtroom. And the minute you start fighting inside the courtroom, the judge will stop your case, send you guys outside, maybe impose costs on you, do 10 other things. And it will obviously affect not just you, but you're also your client. And if you make a habit out of it, of fighting inside the courtroom, the judge will remember all of this. They somehow remember all of these things. They'll the next time you come, before anything, even if you start getting angry, they will kick you out, and then you get another date, right? So, and the longer you stretch, the more workload it is for you. So some people, of course, they get money for each hearing, but then that doesn't mean you keep extending dates for no reason. Because end of the day, it's not a huge community. I mean, there are lots and lots of advocates roaming around, but it's still a very small community. Every advocate wants to poach your client. So the minute they can find evidence, be like, okay, no, this guy does this guy does that, they will use that against you.
I'm
And
so sorry to intrude, Nikhil. We are reaching the closer time, and however, since the webinar was largely about internship, do you mind summing it up for us? Like a quick sum up for 2 minutes. What is your final call on internship? How should it be planned? Like, there are two statements that have touched my heart while you were while you were explaining about internship. Is one is observance. Nobody's going to teach you. It's going to, like, when we are young, when we are babies, we observe and that's how we learn. That's how we become a personality. That is so true about internship. It's all about your observing power. Second, you said it's so well named that, oh, I would want to become a judge, but we never know the other side unless we go and intern there. So yes, these had generally made mark in my head. However, if there's something you would want to sum up, because we are closer and we have another 2 minutes to close this webinar.
Yeah. So I'll just sum up the whole thing. So basically, the whole seminar in short, and doesn't matter if you're a 5-year or a 3-year student, right? A 5-year student roughly gets 10 to 20 internships, 10 2 month and 20 1 month internships, and the 3-year will get 6 to 12. So let's rough it out at 10. My main advice will be start at the lowest level of court you can get, tribunals or district courts, and then proceed accordingly, right? Start at district court, learn the entire ground zero, then go to a judge, then go with firms, then go with other organizations, and if you can, maybe intern with a registrar. Now, a registrar for court is not very, sought out position to intern under, but a registrar scrutinizes each petition filed, takes out the mistakes, and then assigns it to a particular judge, and then you learn the whole admin process, right? So intern that way, and then after 2 3 internships you should have figured out your general area of interest, and then you intern in that area till you can specialize in something, right? Then after you've interned and you've figured out everything, then you can be like, okay, this is uh, what interests me, and then you can find accordingly. Keep exploring, keep observing. The more you observe, the more you learn, and
We
uh,
have two
you
questions
can.
also, Nikhil, in and around what you are concluding. There is this question which says, so how do I get an internship at a district court being a first generation, no connection, no idea what the procedure might be for the same?
Okay, so this particular is a very genuine concern. A lot of people have this concern. First and foremost, I will say, okay, our placement cell is pretty decent in these terms. And if you go to the placement cell, you tell them you want to intern under an advocate in the district court, they will most likely find you an option. If they can't for some reason, or if they can't find something in your interest, what you can also do is there will always be lawyers around you, right? In your colony, in your network, in your friend's father, anybody, right? Anybody could be there. Now, your friend's father may be a judge in the high court, but that doesn't mean he doesn't know lawyers in the district court, right? So you use the network here. The biggest perk you guys have is each other, right?
I
So
come
use
from a
that.
similar fraternity. Let me add in here. It has nothing to do with connections here. Lawyers, this community is so accommodating. Someday visit district court, meet few lawyers, tell them that I intend to intern under you. I believe out of 10, at least 7 would say yes. So it's just a little effort in the similar process and you will get through it. So it isn't that hard. One more question, Nikhil. What about internship for freshers?
So again, so freshers, if you don't want to intern in the district court or anything, I'll we have a list. Okay, so there is DSK, there is Indus Law, there is Tua Associates, there is Phoenix Legal, there is State Legal Service Authority. These are government state legal service authorities, like district attorney and all. Then there is Lokpal of India, there is Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Ministry of Women and Children, there is RBI, there is NLU. NLUs also give out internships. Then there is McKinsey, BCG, World Bank, in which you get into the tax governance side. Then there is World Wildlife Foundation. Then there are multiple NGOs and legal aid clinics, right? You don't have to be like, okay, this looks amazing on my CV. Go just You go to Google, or you go to Loctopus, you go to uh, you know, you Google these places. Telegram groups are there. There is Loctopus, there is Loggiri. There are these websites which give you internships for freshers, and you put in your experience, right? They'll give you an option in a drop down menu. You can be like 0 to 1 years of experience, and they'll give you 100 internships. Now, obviously, all these 100 internships are available to everybody in the country, so you need to keep applying for every place. Now, you people don't apply to 100 places, be like, what if I get into all of them? That's very optimistic of you if you think you will apply to 100 and get into 100. But even if you do, big deal, you've got into 100 organizations for internship. Choose whichever you like best, whichever is more convenient for you, in which you don't have to relocate or spend tons of money just to intern, and just go for it. And because you've already been accepted in on a different one also, once you've interned here, intern in a different place, because if you keep interning in the same place, you don't diversify yourself, which is very crucial. Diversify. So take out the emails from Google, go to their official websites. You'll get emails, contacts, even um, lawyers के numbers for them, or emails at least, shamelessly email them, right? In which, and first and foremost, you need to figure out why you need to intern with them, because they have 100 people applying. Why should they choose you? Why should you choose them? Same, just keep applying, shamelessly email, and eventually
Just
you'll
to
get
add
it.
on here, I think law is all about licensing. It's all about networking. The sooner you learn it, the successful advocate you would be. But this is a altogether different topic to be discussed. However, I'm planning a webinar on similar lines, how to network, how to build your own brand. But I want to thank each one of you who have patiently been here, understood. Trust me, I've been into this profession I am a lawyer myself. I've been into this profession for 7, 8 years, but there's always something new to learn from someone. Like Nikhil said about observations. That's so true. I mean, so with these webinars, and now that you know Nikhil, do you mind sharing your LinkedIn account with the students here on the chat box? Any
Sure.
query you have, and you can ask Nikhil. He happens to know if you advocate. He can refer you if you advocate if you want to go for a district court internship or something like that. That's the art of networking. That's the reason why we are having this alumni mentoring program. So that's how you connect with these students. And Nikhil, in this process, I need to thank you personally for sharing some personal incidents. I mean, there's no bigger learning than sharing what you've actually been through. People come up and talk on those things that are already available on Google, but nobody talks about what the personal experience is, and there's a lot to take from personal experience. That's how I see it. I would want to thank you, Nikhil, for such an enlightening session, and please kindly share your LinkedIn details on the chat box so whoever has any query can reach out to you on LinkedIn and get connected with you on the similar note. Thank you so much. Thanks a ton. We'll catch up with you on the other webinar, which we are planning soon on networking. Thank you.